Well, let's get straight into our first topic. Is the Prime Minister a hypocrite over this row over freebies? Do get your calls in right now. I'd love to hear from you. As you all know, he is facing widespread criticism for failing to declare various gifts like high-end clothing, pairs of spectacles, and now it's emerged he was gifted £4,000 worth of tickets to see Taylor Swift. He's being accused of hypocrisy because, of course, there he was on his high horse, up in arms, when Boris Johnson faced a similar scandal. Just cast your mind back 3 years. There was Boris facing a tirade of criticism for apparently buying super expensive wallpaper using donations that hadn't been properly declared. Starmer called him major sleaze. Well, now the boot's on the other foot. We don't even know who paid for the boot, do we, panel? We really don't. Let's start with you, Belinda. I mean, you know, lots of gifts, clothes and glasses and tickets.
He's having a whale of a time.
He's living the high life, isn't he?
He's behaving like Labour are behaving like they've been in power for decades. It usually takes parties years to get to this level of poor PR, bad optics and sort of scrounging and grifting for things. It's a really bad look. But this is the problem when you sell yourself as a saint. My mum always said, never trust a man who sells himself as a saint, because what tends to happen is they're hiding what they're, you know, a little bit of agenda. And I think Keir he has preached on the highest mountain to all and sundry that he is the king of anti-sleaze, that he is the bastion of moral righteousness, ripping to shreds not only Boris Johnson over cash for curtains, but Rishi and his private jets, all to get to the Palace of Versailles like the French revolutionaries did and just take the garb on and behave just as the royalty did. You know, he is behaving like someone who has no political savviness. You know, the same, you know, when Rishi left D-Day celebrations early, this is the kind of PR optic mistake level.
I think that was a bit different, actually, leaving D-Day early. I think he's been unwise on the amount he's taken. It stretches back 5 years, so most of it was when he wasn't in power. And look, you should buy your own clothes, your own glasses. I think he shouldn't have taken that cash. But to be a hypocrite, you basically say one thing and do another. And I think that charge is proved against him, because the criticism of Boris Johnson, if you go back to the £52,000 on the flat, wasn't just the amount of money. In fact, it was because it was coming from a Tory donor, but it had been covered up and it wasn't going to be declared. And in fact, the Conservative Party got fined by the political regulator, the Electoral Commission. I think it was £17,000 for not declaring it. We know about his clothes, and we know about his wife's clothes because he declared them. Now, he declared the wife's clothes late because he said you didn't know you had to register that £5,000. I'm surprised.
A lawyer said he did it okay.
I'm surprised at that, because I know the system. I'm surprised they didn't know. But it's not hypocrisy.
But let's look at the whole idea of it, though, Kevin. The whole idea of taking gifts, getting bungs, people will see it that way. Yeah. You know, most people, they have something important that they have to go to. If they haven't got an outfit to wear, they have to cadge it, borrow it, save up for it, wear an old outfit they don't like and aren't happy in. They don't get the option of various people bestowing enormous amounts of money upon them to enable them to purchase clothing.
Vanessa.
So the question is, what about the very premise of giving gifts to the Prime Minister, or indeed any MP?
Vanessa, we can ask him to wear a hair shirt and her to wear a potato sack tied by a bit of string and never go anywhere. But, you know, I think people all over Britain would have loved to have been offered Taylor Swift.
Absolutely. There we can see the Starmer's absolutely having a great time.
You've got to beware of people bearing gifts.
Well, especially when it comes with a transaction.
They want access. They want access to you. And this is right across politics.
Downing Street.
Not just him. I've looked at Nigel Farage's entry in the Register of Members' Interest and people paying for his trips, big money.
Lord Ali got a pass for 10 Downing Street. This seems transactional, and that, I think, should concern everyone.
What do you think the peer worth £200 million could actually get? I mean, he's got everything. Lord Ali has got it. He shouldn't have had that pass, unquestionably. I hope he doesn't get an honour the way Boris Johnson's interior designer did. I always wonder if she had a pass too. Look, I think Starmer has been unwise, particularly when you're cutting winter fuel allowance for pensioners. When it looks as if you're living the high life, when you're going to make life worse for other people.
But
the hypocrisy is a different charge.
We all know the phrase champagne socialist. Yes. We all know the idea that
nothing's too good for the workers.
Well, everybody else has to, has to bite the bullet and everybody else is going to find it an incredibly tough winter, and pensioners may be cold, and they may be so cold they may end up in casualty, and they may be very ill because of it. And yet, it's absolutely terrific to have £4,000 worth of Taylor Swift.
I think it's
it's the kind of grabbiness of it,
is.
isn't it? That
It is
doesn't
pure
sit well with
champagne
people.
socialism. This is typical of what happens when socialists get into power, by the way. They make sure everyone's equal in their misery outside their little castle. And they get the robes on that the kings had before them and act like, you know, royalty.
Would you have taken free tickets for Taylor Swift if the Premier League, let's be honest, does the Premier League football offered him tickets? Would you have taken them?
If I was responsible for, in Labour's own research words, killing 4,000 pensioners, removing winter fuel, releasing rapists and wife-beaters onto the streets of Britain,
You'd have taken those tickets.
I would think the look would be too bad.
You would have taken those tickets.
If I was concerned about my reputation, I wouldn't. If I was just a normal person on the street, of course, but Keir isn't. He's got responsibilities. He's got an image for the world.
Pull the other one. You'd have taken those tickets.
I think it's disgusting.
You won't offer them, and I think if you're Prime Minister, you've got to be careful who you take them from as well. Now, I think the Premier League, because it's a big public body, we know, I don't think that's too bad. Really dodgy business people, you'd have to be very, very
Right, let's
careful
take some
about.
calls on this because, unsurprisingly, they are flowing in. Let's talk to Linnair in Fife. Linnair, what do you think about this?
Good morning.
Hello.
I hope you're all well.
Nice to talk to you.
In 2019, the SNP Lord Provost of Glasgow was forced to resign after spending £8,000 of a £10,000 officially sanctioned clothing allowance, which she declared. The principal complainers were the Labour Party, who, and I quote, said, "For any politician to think that they can claim something like this is a joke." The Daily Record, the Herald and the BBC ran the story for weeks. Stephen Flynn was forced to go through a 4-month inquiry for using a 28 pence piece of stationery, and there was nothing done about it. It's absolute hypocrisy.
So when Kevin says it's not actually hypocrisy, I'm still not quite sure what the finer points of your thesis are. Why is it not hypocrisy? If he criticised Boris Johnson for it and now is doing something very similar, why is that hypocrisy?
If he criticised Boris Johnson for taking tickets and then he's taken tickets, that would be hypocrisy. If you've criticised Boris Johnson for lying and you've criticised him for having a Tory donor secretly pay for Downing Street to be done up, but you try to conceal it, and your party is later fined for concealing it, if you did the same, that would be hypocrisy. That's what I'm saying. He's never gone around and said no MP can ever go to an event. He's never said that.
He hasn't, but he's claimed.
No, but he hasn't. But that would be the hypocrisy charge.
His gifts add up to more than 100,000 quid.
But that's not hypocrisy.
Free stuff. What do you see it as hypocrisy? What do you see?
Well, I do. If you're actually saying to another political party that they can claim something that is a joke, and then do exactly the same thing 5 years later, where is there no hypocrisy there?
And let me ask you something, Linnair. Are you happy for your Prime Minister to look ultra smart in high-end designer togs? Do you think it's important that his wife projects a certain level of elegance? And even more, are you happy for him to let his hair down at a £4,000 worth of tickets to Taylor Swift? I mean, do you feel that he kind of deserves it because of high office? Or do you think this is absolutely ridiculous, living life high on the hog?
It's ridiculous. His position doesn't entitle him to these freebies. Yes, indeed, if he gets the chance to do something once in a great while, yes. But this is never ending.
And what do you think about the gulf between the life most people are facing this winter and the life that he's evidently, busily, thoroughly enjoying already?
Well, that's the problem. This is why people are angry. Pensioners are honestly really worried. And to see a Prime Minister and his wife concerned about what their fashion sense is, to me, is really quite disturbing.
And thank you very much indeed. I mean, given, do you think that this is playing very badly and therefore it does denote a kind of lack of political awareness?
Oh, yeah, no. He's taken too much. I'm not saying politicians should be banned. Some might say it, banned from going to anything at all, but it's all a sense of proportion, then public perception and how people react, including Lanier there. Now, that case of the provost, if that was just how much he could spend and he spent it, I'd be surprised if he's hounded out there. And I just wonder if there is more to it. But political opponents always point the finger at somebody else and not themselves. I'd take an equal finger-pointing attitude to this. And I think Keir Starmer has taken too much.
I mean, you might say the role of the opposition is almost entirely finger-pointing. That's what they do. They stand there and do that.
But
for decades, that's what he's been doing, isn't it?
I think there is also, for me, I can see a man who has not been properly scrutinised by a majority of the mainstream media while he's been in opposition, as they often aren't in the same way, which has lulled him into this false sense of security and power and not being accountable. And I think that has possibly given him this really, I mean, he's totally deluded if he thinks this isn't going to hurt his reputation, but maybe he just thought he was above it all because he has not had the scrutiny and the attacks that other politicians.
On the other hand, he's on the cusp of a very recent, absolutely magnificent victory, isn't he? So it's so early on in the proceedings. What harm can this really do?
There was huge scrutiny of him, both his spending, his lifestyle, when he'd been director of public prosecutions, everything. Look, we've got a Tory press in this country that was very hostile to him all the way. The politicians who get surprised are your party leader, Nigel Farage, who had no scrutiny when he wasn't an MP. Now he comes in, you see, he's making more than £1 million a year from second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth and seventh jobs.
And how do you feel about that, Belinda? How do you feel?
That's not against the law. I think that David Lammy is
that all right?
Show.
Because you're pointing the finger at Starmer. I've said he's taken too much. It's a bad look. It's wrong. Are you saying it's all right for Nigel Farage to make more than £1 million on top of his parliamentary salary of £91,000 from his second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth and seventh jobs? Before we go in to the trips he's had being paid by others, one a Thai-based tech multi-millionaire, another by a convicted fraudster.
This just sounds the politics of envy, typical of the left.
That's all right for you.
There are plenty of people in the Labour Party who are very, 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 very rich.
It's all right for you?
No, I'm saying it's certainly not illegal if you can earn money. Good for Nigel, good for anyone. I think if you want to attract the best into politics, it's not at all, because I'm saying...
Double standards.
Kevin,
at least he's worked for the money.
I am saying
gifts. Let's talk to Helen, who's on the line in Edinburgh. Helen, hello there, morning.
Good morning, Vanessa.
Now, what do we think? Do we think this is hypocrisy? Do we think he's just got lucky? What do we think?
I think it's a disgrace, an absolute disgrace. No, everyone knows that a gift from, when you're in high power, there must be strings attached. Whether they're acknowledged or not, nobody gives anything without really expecting something in return.
Do you think this shows something about the Prime Minister that you didn't realise about his personality? Do you think it's a political misjudgment, a personality thing? What do you actually think is going on, Helen? What do you see here?
I just think it's probably a whole mindset of people who've just lived that life for years, where there's been free lunches, free holidays, the use of this, the use of that. And let's not just blame the politicians. We know the royal family are not averse to freebies being flung at them. I just think it's always the ones at the bottom that get the kicking and have to do without.
I mean, it would be very difficult, I think, to argue against that, wouldn't you?
I think it's a good point, Helen. Look, why weren't you offered £4,000 worth of Taylor Swift tickets? It's probably because the Premier League thought they wouldn't get anything from you. You're quite right. It's a softening up process. So you get to know them, you like them, and then when they come with a problem, you'll view them more favourably. That's why I think politicians, anyone in public life, actually people in private companies too, because most big private companies now have rules on what you can accept and what you don't. We do at the Daily Mirror. There's some gifts.
But it's very different when there's
near.
This much power involved. The lady Helen compared it to the royal family. Royal family have no power. This is gaining access to power through freebies, through have a £1,200 pair of glasses. You don't need them, but here, have a designer jacket. It is access to power that is the key here.
People make money.
Very dangerous.
I think no question that this leaves a bad taste in very many people's mouths. Thanks to Helen, and thank you so much for all your comments on this one.